Good afternoon. Here we are at Tuesday Talks, and I'm so thrilled that you're able to join us again. And it is my great pleasure today to introduce to you our composer in residence, Gwyneth Walker. Gwyneth, thank you for joining us today.
Hi.
So I think that I said something that maybe many of you do not know what I mean, and that is the phrase composer in residence. Gwyneth, can you shed a little bit of light on that terminology for us?
Well, I think it varies from orchestra to orchestra, but in this case, I'm a composer whose works have been performed and will be again performed by your orchestra. So, of course, I have come up to Petoskey. So, I have been in residence for rehearsals and performances. And that's part of what the term means. But to me, it also means to size up the community and get a sense of who does what, and then what sort of music could I provide that would be related to your orchestra and your community. So it's both the playing of existing works and then the showing up and listening and getting a sense, and then perhaps writing some new things that pertain to you.
Well, and for us, it certainly means a very special relationship with a very special, very prolific composer like yourself.
Yes.
And for an orchestra of our size, it is a bit unusual to have a composer in residence. So, of course, we're thrilled that we have this relationship with you that we have had for the last couple of years. And yes, you're right. You have joined us on a couple of occasions as we have both the orchestra and the chorus has performed your music. And of course, due to COVID, we were not able to have you join us this past June, which was on the schedule. So we will get you back again as soon as we can.
Yes.
You know, I had the absolute pleasure of both times that you were here in Petoskey of being able to spend quite a bit of time with you, and we drove around. And I recall a story, Gwyneth, that you shared with me about as a very young child, you were composing, and you were composing for your friends, and you sat them down. And can you tell us a little bit about that? I thought it was just a delightful story.
Yes, but I'll have to preface this by saying you were kind enough to drive me hither and yon because my Great Lakes Cantata has a movement about each one of the Great Lakes. And I honestly had never seen Lake Huron. So you drove me up to, what is it called up there at the
We went to St. Ignace. We crossed the Mackinac Bridge.
Mackinac Bridge, so that I could honestly say I had seen Lake Huron. I haven't seen all of Lake Huron, but I have seen all of the Great Lakes now. So
Well, and that's an interesting vista because on one side is Lake Michigan and on one side is Lake Huron, and we were up over the bridge and then had lunch in St. Ignace. So yes, it was just a delightful.
That was very important because I would have been embarrassed to admit to other people later that I had missed one of the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
So I guess on one of those drives, I must have filled you in, or maybe you asked me when I started composing. And basically, when I was 2, I saw and heard the piano in our house. And I'm the daughter of an inventor. So, of course, I crawled right over, and I have a good ear that I inherited from my mother. So I started emulating what I'd heard my sister playing, the Beethoven Furiolis. And then I got interested in how to put those notes on the page. So I guess that differentiates me from a lot of kids who like to bang away. I was fascinated with the scientific mind, where the notes go on the page that equate to the notes on the piano. So by the time I was in first grade, I was writing little orchestras from my friends, and they'd come to my house on Monday and I'd hand out my array of toy instruments, or 2 of the girls would sit at the piano and play piano forehand, and I would give the downbeat and out would come my short composition. But it always had everybody's part and my name on it. G. Walker, here's your part. So I guess I got the idea that a composer was somebody who wrote pieces and then handed them to other people to play. So I've been doing that ever since I was 2.
Right, exactly. Well, and as I mentioned earlier, you are a very prolific composer. And now tell us a little bit about that. I mean, two questions, I guess. One is, I know you compose for choral works and you compose for orchestra, and maybe back up a little bit. And what is the process that you use? Is it, do words sort of give you that impetus to compose, or is it a melody that you hear in your head? Or how does it all come together, Gwyneth?
Well, it starts often with a commission. We'll start with that. But if it's a choral or vocal piece, I'm always reading poetry to try to get ideas. So that then when somebody commissions a work for a chorus, I have some poems on hand, and I can select one that would be right for that group. And of course, the imagery and the poetry governs the composition, especially the accompaniment, which is going to have to sum up the Great Lakes, shall we say, or any number of things. So it would start definitely with the concept, I'm going to write a piece about the Great Lakes. Okay, here is a poem about Lake Superior, father of Great Lakes, they call that. Very grand. And I would read the poem and say, okay, this is going to be a forceful song, very different from the introduction. I will sing thee a song, O Lakes, would be very different. So I get the gist of the whole composition from the poems, and then I write it. Now, of course, I write music that is purely instrumental. Sometimes it's topical, like the overture to the Great Lakes that I have, which is like setting out in a boat, and it has sort of a sea chanty to it. So there would be a topical thing. I haven't written too many pieces just called Symphony Number 1 that doesn't have reference. Even if I thought this will be pure music, soon enough, I start thinking of the pond across the street or birds flying by or something happens. So I guess I bring in other elements.
Sure. Are there times where you're going in a certain direction with a piece, and I don't know, the next day or you get a new thought and you go, wait a minute, I want to change this, or I want this to sound different?
Well, you should be making those kind of decisions before you really start. You should have an outline for what you want to do. You don't want to start composing and get into the piece and then think, oops, this isn't what I want. You should test things out before you even start by just writing down a couple of sentences. This piece will be about blah, 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 blah. And I might do that well in advance of writing it. I might do it while I'm on a walk, while I might be in the midst of actually writing another piece. And then the next day I'll read what I said. And I said, that's going to work. Or I don't think so. Let me just write another couple of sentences. But you should make those deliberations before you start the composing.
Sure. Well, I know that you mentioned that you are certainly very dedicated, and you in fact have a schedule that you generally keep every.
Oh, always, not generally. I always compose from when I get up in the morning until early afternoon. Then I run across the street and play tennis or swim. We have a pool here. And then I do some more work in the evening, but usually not as creative. It could be proofreading or editing, unless I didn't quite finish what I wanted to in the morning. So I have my bulk of my composing is from first thing in the morning till 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and then some more in the evening. But certain days I will write almost all day. Today was more of a writing because yesterday was a big tennis day, so you can only run that much. In New England, we hope maybe one day will be sunny and one will be rainy, and therefore play tennis or compose. But we haven't had that much rain, so I have to just sit at my desk anyway. Some days it's best to sit there a long time to really get some work done, but that's not healthy every day in a row. Your body, it's
Right.
not good for the body.
Right. Yes. Well, we've had some beautiful weather up here too, so I'm glad to hear that you have out there in New England where you are. And although we have rain and thunderstorms today, but I guess we need a little bit of that too.
Well, I was going to say that one of my colleagues, well, actually all of my colleagues are out of work pretty much, but one of them, he isn't composing as much as he'd like to. He just feels depressed, I think, because he needs the other people there to be, when's the piece ready, or let's rehearse, or even if they're rehearsing something else, he feeds off of that. And he said, Gwyneth, I just marvel that you keep writing every day.
Yeah.
And I said, well, there are people waiting at the other end. I think about the people a lot. Otherwise, I mean, I would be subject to depression too, of losing
Sure.
all the concerts we were going to have, not to mention the lives that are being lost. It's a very depressing time, and it's easy for composers stuck at home to get depressed and not get up and write.
Right.
So, you know, when I think of you and your orchestra, then I say, I have to get up and write.
Exactly. Do you generally, is it a combination of you are contacted to write a commissioned piece, and then there's also things that you just want to write, and so is that sort of a combination for you?
It is now, it didn't used to be, but now that the commissioned works are now published works, which sell. And so royalties are an income also. And so I'm in a luxurious place, I guess, that I can sometimes write something that's not commissioned. And I was going to remind you that I wrote a song called The Heart of the Tree that I sent to, what's your conductor, your Andre?
Lieber Andres? Yes.
No, the man who conducts the chorus, the choir director.
Oh, yes.
Andre.
Andre Stryden.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I learned from Libor that Petoskey's called the city of trees.
Yes.
So I decided to write a song based on the poem The Heart of the Tree, which I sent to Andre. And I think I sent it to you, but you hadn't mentioned it. But that was, you know, that was harmless in terms of expense on my part, but I just couldn't resist. And I know that there are other communities that love their trees too. So sometimes something just comes to mind that I have to do. And that's one of the things I did.
Oh, so strong. Yeah. So in our history together, I know that there have been 4 occasions where we have programmed music by Gwyneth Walker,
Mhm.
and 2 occasions you have been here in Petoskey with us. And I think one of them we were performing, and they were all chorus pieces, so orchestra and chorus, a testament to peace. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you created that?
Yes, I was trying to think about when I orchestrated that. I can't quite remember which came first, but I was I was commissioned to write some music for Fairfield University nearby in Connecticut, and that's a Catholic university. So I chose some poems by Thomas Merton, a Trappist monk poet, American, and I thought that would be appropriate. So I made quite a few of those. Oh, now I remember. Then that one of those songs I thought would be good with orchestra. And also I've orchestrated other of my pieces too, because there seems to be a need. And if you don't orchestrate it, then it won't get selected, you know? So I had another called A Tree of Peace. And then there's another song. I can't remember what they all are. You caught me off guard there, but
Yeah, right. Tell the earth to shake.
yes, yeah,
Earth
that's a Thomas Merton one.
glory.
Tell the Earth to Shake. And then The Tree of Peace is John Greenleaf Whittier. That's a Quaker poet.
Yeah.
And then is the third one called?
To glory.
Yeah, that's a Thomas Merton. I thought it would make a set. It's good to have more than one of something. You don't want the whole chorus to get up there with your music and sing for 3 minutes, and then people wonder, is there something else? So I orchestrated a group of them. They weren't necessarily composed at the same time, but the orchestration was.
Okay. And so do you sometimes start then with the piano accompaniment,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah, always.
then you orchestrate? Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it could be years later that I orchestrate. A long time ago, I wrote some pieces for women's voices, including I Thank You, God, which is a well-known piece of mine. But I had a whole set of songs for women's voices. And then I thought to myself, you know, there really isn't much for women's voices with orchestra. And I said, so I decided on my own to do this. Well, the ink was barely dry before somebody had programmed this at Carnegie Hall.
Oh
You know, and I thought, wow. She said, "Hey, did you ever do that project?" And I said, yes. And so I got it done in time for that. And if you don't write it, what is that for the Field of Dreams? If you don't build it, if you build it, they will come. If you write it, they will program it. So I have orchestrated quite a few of my choral works.
Well, And we love that, and we have done, like I said, on several occasions.
Yeah.
I'd like to take a moment and have you share with us, I think, another wonderful story that is special to Great Lakes Chamber Orchestra, and that is your Habitat for Humanity songs. And would you just share with everybody a little bit where that came from and why, and the significance of those songs?
Yes, and you were right there at the beginning. We had a concert. Was that the Overture, Great Lakes Overture? I can't remember. It was one of the two concerts that was there, and there was a pre-concert reception. So I was talking with some people, and this two men who were on the board arrived a little late. They were kind of, out of breath. And somebody said, "Oh, John, I'm so glad to see you." I don't know if his name was John. And he said, "Well, we were building a house for Habitat today." And my ears perked up because, these people could have been playing golf. They could have been doing something different. And one of them was an engineer. He wasn't simply hammering nails. One of them had designed the house, and the other one was helping. And these two very bright, educated men who could have been playing golf in the afternoon instead had been building a house for Habitat. So I just remembered that, and I didn't hone in on them. I didn't, grab them and tell me more. I just thought, oh, that's something that's special about your community, is that your symphony community, is that board members are very involved with Habitat. So I decided that I would write some songs for home. And one of them is a updated version of the spiritual Building Me a Home. And another one is more spiritual, and a house of love and light. It's more gentle. I just tried to have, I think, 3 or 4 completely different songs that had to do with the sense of home. And it's inspired by your board members, whose names I don't know.
Right. Yes. Well, Randy, who's still on our board, and John, who has moved away. But
oh, it was John.
yes,
there was a John.
There was a John. And of course, we are so disappointed that we have had to put that concert off. And that's how I'm going to phrase it, because we will do those Habitat for Humanity songs in concert. And we were prepared to do a collaboration, a partnership with Habitat for Humanity, our local chapter up here, and just looking forward to those kinds of community relationships are so important, and so important for the orchestra. So we'll just put that on hold, and once the curtain rises, as I like to say, and we're back on stage with live performing, we will make sure that it's a time when you can come back up and join us, and we can be here, because people, our audience really loves seeing you and being able to meet you and talk with you. And that's just such an important piece.
Well, that project comes back to one of your initial questions, was what is a composer in residence? And I said the composer in residence is someone who not only shows up, but scouts out what would be important to that community. And that was definitely something I thought, well, let's have something about Habitat, so you could even get these board members to come up on the stage, and they could even give a pitch for Habitat at the same time. I mean, it seems like a very natural way of involving everybody. There's no reason that people who are working for Habitat building homes should ever say, "Oh, I've never been to our orchestra, I have no interest." And we say, "Oh, yes, you do." Would you like to be on the stage? And you can tell us in a few words about the homes you've been building, or maybe some of the people who've received homes would like to come on the stage too, and just say, "This is my home," and show a picture. And, it doesn't have to be about me and my music. It has to be about the community. And then in our community, we have an orchestra and a chorus, and now we will sing and play about these.
Yeah, I particularly get so excited about sort of what I like to call sort of these unconventional partnerships, maybe, whether it's for the local Humane Society or Habitat, or it's the high school. We've done a collaboration with some of the high school kids and their robotics teams, and things like that. And I think that it really shows the community that, yes, we are classical music, but you know what? It fits and it works in this setting and in that setting and in that setting. And we are not untouchable. You know, we have music and you know, can bring entertainment to everybody.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I know you've done a Great Lakes cantata. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what prompted that? That was a commission, now, Gwyneth, wasn't it?
Yes, in Toledo. Years and years ago, the Toledo Choral Society, which is a big chorus, contacted me because their centennial was coming up. Is It's now, okay? And they wanted to commission a piece. And I thought, well, all right. And he said, no, a 30-minute work for chorus and orchestra. And I said, yikes, what kind of a text did you have in mind? And the young conductor, Rick Napiarala, mentioned something about the stained glass windows in Toledo being particularly beautiful, and maybe I could use the passages from the Bible about them. And I thought, well, that was clever, and also there'd be no copyright problem. But I'm a Quaker, and I'm not really that liturgical. And so I was trying to think of something else, and it just came to me, remembering that Toledo was near Lake Erie. I said, how about something about the Great Lakes? It just came to me that that would be an idea. And he said, great. So I then started looking for poems about the Great Lakes, of which there are many, and many are by Canadian poets. There are many poems about the Great Lakes. So I decided I would do 5 songs, each one about each Great Lake, and also a prologue and an epilogue. So that's a 7-movement work, and first write it for chorus with piano, and then orchestrate it. So that's it, the Great Lakes Cantata. And it was about that time that Libor emailed me because your orchestra was performing one of my other works. And I mentioned this, seeing the name of your orchestra. I said, the Great Lakes Chamber Orchestra, would you be interested in the Great Lakes Cantata?
Yes, so,
Of course. So you're giving, you were lined up to give the second performance. So that's how it goes. And I, as a New Englander, have had to learn a lot more about the Great Lakes. That's why I'm so glad you took me to see Lake Huron. But I really could not have named all the Great Lakes at first. And my cantata goes from east to west. So Ontario, Huron, help me out. I know Superior's at the end.
Michigan,
Yeah.
Superior.
Yeah, but what have I forgotten? Ontario, Huron, Erie. Ontario, Huron, Erie,
Yeah.
Michigan, Superior.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the order that I did. And I tried to have poems that were very different. One of them is very funny about the islands in Lake Huron. And the one from Michigan has some Carl Sandburg poems. So it's more for soloists, sitting by the shore, more intimate. And then the Lake Superior is very powerful. So I just tried to have different things.
We look forward to being able to perform that and having you join us. And as I said at the beginning, this has been a wonderful relationship, and one that the orchestra, we are thrilled to have you as our composer in residence, and a woman and an American composer, and all of that. And you're able to join us when we are programming your music. So that is wonderful. We will wrap things up. And Gwyneth, I want to thank you for joining us today on Tuesday Talks. And I would like to thank all of you for joining us. And I hear some wonderful comments from the audience and our patrons who are enjoying these sort of insightful conversations with various people that have touched the life of the orchestra. And so I thank you for tuning in and being part of this. And I also encourage you to support the orchestra, especially during this time. We look forward to being back on stage with live performances as soon as it is safe to do so, safe for our audience and safe for our musicians. So together we will get through this. But as we all know, music and Gwyneth, music is so important, and it has such healing aspects and is such a wonderful thing in our lives. And I want to thank you for sharing your talents with us and being with the Great Lakes Chamber Orchestra. So thank you to everybody for joining us today on Tuesday Talks, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Okay, bye everybody.